Well, with just 2 days to D-Day in Uganda, we get you the latest from CCTV's Jen Keo. She's live in Kampala. Jen, the campaigning period is now closed. What would you say were the key highlights of the final day?
Well, Penina, like you saw there, this was that day, that final day when the candidates, the 8 candidates, were making that final push, not just to pull the crowds, but rather to win the votes, particularly for the undecided voters. Now, the 3 main candidates, that's Kizza Besigye, Amama Mbabazi, and President Yoweri Museveni, were here in the capital, Kampala. Kizza Besigye and Yoweri Museveni campaigning just about 6 kilometers apart. Of course, Besigye advocating for change, believing that part of the problems in Uganda are as a result of the 30-year leadership under President Yoweri Museveni. Of course, Museveni and his NRM party dispute this. They believe that the opposition, at least from what we saw in the debate, the opposition doesn't really have an idea of what it is they are talking about. Museveni says he is the man who should be credited with turning around Uganda, bringing peace and stability. Now, Penina, again, like we've been saying, Kampala is historically an opposition zone. So unless something drastic happened that will see the NRM, that's President Yoweri Museveni's party, win, it's never really won in the previous elections. Now, the 5 other candidates were also traversing throughout the country. Most of them were in the countryside, we are told, where they will be casting their ballots. Now, there was also increased security presence, particularly after what happened yesterday. Kizza Besigye himself confirmed that indeed one of his supporters had died in the clashes yesterday here on Ginger Road. Now, what we are hearing is that security, there's going to be continued security presence throughout the voting period. Remember, the polling stations, they are ruled that the polling stations should be 100 meters free zone. So once you cast your ballot, you should leave. No one is allowed to go into the polling centers with their cell phones. And this is an issue that the opposition candidates have also raised about, concerns about. Now, so Penina, basically, we can now say that the onus is now on the 15 million registered voters to decide who's going to lead their country next.
And earlier, Jane, we heard opposition candidate Kizza Besigye say that he believed the vote will not be free and fair. Has there been any response from the ruling party or the Electoral Commission about that?
Well, officially, we've not really heard from the commission, but a short while ago, a commissioner was speaking to one of the local radio stations here, and of course, he did dismiss those allegations by Kizza Besigye. He said that the opposition leader is just trying to raise tensions in the country, create problems in the country. But the commission has indeed come under a lot of scrutiny and criticism, particularly after last week it was discovered that the electoral list, the voters list, has about 20,000 voters, ghost voters. Now, the commission ended up replacing that list with a new one, uploading a fresh voters list. But the opposition candidates are saying they still don't have access to this new list. And that's why they're concerned that there may be no transparency in the elections. Now, the commission, of course, says that it's best suited to carry out this exercise as it's done in the previous elections. Now, President Yoweri Museveni sort of alluded to this, but in terms of warning against tolerating anyone who would incite or try to create violence during and after the polls, Penina.
All right, Jane Keo live there in Kampala for us. Many thanks, Jane.